Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to our show. Today, we're talking about a cost that almost every HR leader carries, but only a few maybe ever see. And that's the true amount of time leave management really takes. Not in a general sense, but in a specific task by task sense. What it actually requires, what it's displacing, and what the data shows about the difference between organizations that have addressed this or not. So today, to help me unpack everything, I'm here with Tilt's Chief Revenue Officer, Brandon Salisbury. Brandon, this is not your first rodeo, so thanks for joining me once again for another great discussion.
Yeah, Nick, always enjoy joining you.
So Brandon, I want to just cover this very high level first question. Why does leave management feel so time consuming for HR? Feels like there's so many HR leaders out there that feel this. They deal with this every single day.
Yeah, leave management isn't just managing one task. Every leave has a series of responsibilities that carry their own time requirement. And so those kind of stack up on each other and take a bit of time to work through. And it covers the duration of a leave. You don't just complete a task one time and move on. You've got things like intake and eligibility review, required notices going out in the right windows, certification tracking, payroll coordination, making sure people are paid and coordinating where that payment is coming from, communication with the manager so they know when they're out and when they're coming back, helping them with their coverage plan. You've got employee updates, return planning. Every one of those is a separate thing that has to happen throughout the life cycle of a leave. It stayed the same so long because there's never been really a compelling reason to examine it, right? Like it gets handled, it gets done, cases get closed, and then nobody asks how much of HR's time is actually required because the output looked fine from the inside. Complexity has grown significantly. There's been, more state leave laws, more leave types, more employees with varied situations. No leave is the same.
Yeah, it's what seems to be one task quickly turns into two, turns into 10, turns into an unlimited laundry list of things that go on during a leave of absence that has to go smoothly and correctly. And there's things in there that leaders are catching on right away. And then there's things that can get swept under the rug that don't get the light that they should. So, Brandon, I'm curious, during these tasks, what do HR leaders underestimate about how much time leave management is actually taking? What's taking more time than what people expect?
The most obvious one is I don't know that everyone always accounts for the amount of time that communicating with their manager is going to take. One Slack message is not much. When you got to work through a situation, you need a meeting, you're slacking, you're messaging back and forth, you're having another meeting. Like those small investments start to add up over time. Another area that generally gets unaccounted for is coordinating with payroll. Every correction, every manual handoff, every follow up to confirm pay continuation. Yeah, those aren't small tasks. Like all of those things take some time. Finally, I think, another significant area that's often not accounted for is context switching. Just reading a post today, just the number of things that the individual that generally handles LOA generally has to handle, like accommodations and things like that. There's oftentimes leave of absence is one of many areas in benefits that HR has to handle. So every time an issue with a leave comes up and there's a recovery time on top of the interruption itself, they've got to get back into the mindset of what they were doing. They got to catch back up on the context around what they were doing. And HR actually sits down and lists every task that they do for a single leave case, including the interruptions and the follow-ups. Scope is almost always double what they estimated managing a leave would take them going in.
Mhm. And because they are spending so much time on everything when it comes to leave, there's only so much time in the day, right? There's only so much that they're able to do. So if it's a process that doesn't fit the needs of what their team has to deal with, of what the employees need to get through to feel secure and smooth throughout the process, there's a cost that happens here. If they're having to spend so much time focusing on a process that just has so much of an administrative burden, it prevents HR from being able to support the team. So I'm curious on like this cost, this opportunity cost. If HR is being consumed, if they're being swamped with all things leave, what tasks are being sidelined when this happens?
Yeah, like you said, there's only so much time in a day, and so there's only like HR has decisions to make when the scope creeps on, managing a leave. And so when you look
Mhm.
at like they have a decision of, do I work later? Do I work more? Do I put in more time? Which, is a tough thing when you have things to manage outside of work, or you're already working, long hours. Or do I deprioritize other work that needs to get done? And so, oftentimes when work gets deprioritized, what generally gets pushed out is we focus on the things that need to get done right now. Those are the fires in front of us. We deprioritize the strategic work that we're hired to do. There's also an employee cost that's much harder to measure, but it's just as real. The person that needed more support during their leave, but got a status update instead. The
Mhm.
conversation that should have happened but didn't because HR didn't have the bandwidth. Those moments matter. It's those times where HR can or can show up that often play a lasting role in employee perception of the company. Leave administration doesn't just cost HR time. Oftentimes we think of this as like an HR task and try to allocate the time to administer leave just to HR. But it also costs the organization the work that HR doesn't have the capacity to do because of it. And so that's a different and probably a more compelling argument than just simply calculating the hours alone.
Mhm. And the hours alone still tell something. And that was one of the things that we uncovered within our newest leave benchmark report that we put out just a couple weeks ago at the time of this recording. And one of the findings that we had in this report is that company size can play a meaningful role in determining how much time HR teams are spending on leave. Why is that both for like smaller and mid-sized companies? Like, how do they still feel the effects?
The lead benchmark report that we put out, there were some surprising things in there and some really interesting data as it related to leave. And one of the things that it shows is that time burden increases significantly with company size. Companies with fewer than 250 employees average, 3.9 hours per leave case. But organizations with 250 to 1,000 average 5.8 hours. When you get into organizations with over 1,000 employees, it just continues to rise. Where those size companies are seeing 6.3 hours per lead case. For smaller organizations, the data may look manageable on paper, but context really plays a role here. A team managing 3.9 hours across per case across 20 to 30 cases a year, that's a significant portion of the
Yeah.
total work time.
Mhm.
And so the absolute the number of hours might be lower, but when you look at it percentage wise, the proportional impact on HR bandwidth is just as significant as the large organizations.
And it also shows that it's not just the company size that matters, but it's also can be determined by how teams are managing their leave of absence process. How does a team's current program, whether it's done, completely within their own realm, within their own team, or they outsource it to a third party vendor, or maybe it's a combination of those two somewhere in there. How does that predict, or how can we see how much time that they're likely to spend on each leave?
What the data shows is just it's a very clear relationship between how leave is managed and how much time it consumes. So like organizations managing leave manually average 6.8 hours per case. Those that have like an automated or more structured approach average 2.6 hours, so like almost a third of that time. Companies that are using kind of a hybrid approach of some automation, some manual effort, kind of fit right in the middle, around 4.2 hours per case.
Mhm.
Uh, so that 4.2 hour case, difference in case between manual and automated, like that's not insignificant. And so for an organization processing 30 cases a year, that's over 125 hours over the course of a year. What this tells HR leaders about their current approach is that the time cost isn't fixed. It's a reflection of how the process is designed. It's definitely not out of your control. You definitely have some ability to impact that. The data also shows organizations that use vendors manage 70% more paid leave, while spending 25% less on administration. So
Mm.
we manage more, takes less time. So more leave, less time. The combination is only possible when there's a structured process around something more than just individual effort. You can only tell people to run faster so much before
Yeah.
giving them tools to do it.
hmm And when teams are looking to find the best approach, it's going to take some time. There is some investment that they have to make into it. But going through that search is better than just leaving their current leave process unaddressed, especially if their process isn't really working as best as it should. So, when this goes unaddressed, what does it look like inside of an organization, inside of an HR team, if an effective leave process goes unresolved? For HR, and I would even also add for managers and for employees that are going through a leave of absence.
For HR, when a lead process that's broken or isn't efficient, doesn't go is not fixed, they kind of go into this like permanent reactive mode.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's like we never feel like we're ahead. We're always like reactive. We're like trying to dig out, right? And a function that was, in HR that was meant to be kind of a strategic partner ends up being, just really focused on managing the day-to-day tasks and leave administration. If it doesn't get resolved, for managers, they're left with confusion, inconsistency. When HR is stressed and they're stretched really thin on leave, managers don't get all the guidance that they need. They handle situations differently. The employee experience becomes dependent on which manager they have rather than what the organization's designed. That can lead to a whole nother set of issues when employees are getting different experiences. And then finally, for employees on leave, it just looks like silence. Like you're out on leave and it's like, good luck. We'll see you when you get back and hopefully you come back and all that. Communication stops, updates stop coming. The employees navigating one of the most significant moments in their professional and perhaps personal life. It could be a health event, a new child, family crisis. And in that critical moment, the organization goes quiet, and that silence really shapes how they feel about the organization for the long term, especially once immediately after that leave is over, and they have decisions to make on what that return looks like. With all of these situations, the compounding effect is really what makes this costly. Each of those three areas: HR in reactive mode, inconsistent manager behavior, employees feeling unsupported, it feeds into the others, and over time they show up together in retention and engagement data in ways that are difficult to reverse. The damage is already done.
Now, let's say they do address it. Let's say there's a team out there that does address this and they do get that time back that is so valuable to this function. What does that return on that investment look like? I would imagine that getting some time back into their day is for sure going to be felt and cherished. But I'm curious from your end on if you want to expand on anything.
What we found is that organizations treating leave as a high priority see 92% post-leave retention. So 92%
Mhm.
of employees going out on leave come back. Low priority organizations see a 68% post-leave retention rate. And so, it's a 24-point gap that's not driven by policy. It's driven by the quality of the experience HR is able to deliver
Mhm.
when they have the bandwidth to prioritize leave. We also got some really good feedback around EMPS. It tells the same story. High priority leave organizations report an average of an EMPS of 70, which if that's very high on the EMPS scale. Whereas low priority organizations report an EMPS of 30, which is
Mhm.
more than double when you prioritize leave. And again, that's driven primarily by how the leave experience is prioritized, not necessarily what is offered in terms of the benefit. Post-leave performance similarly follows a similar pattern. 61% of employees in high priority environments report successful post-leave performance compared to 19% in low priority ones. That can come from a number of reasons, but my speculation would be that it generally comes because they're somewhat disengaged, and when you show up for your people, they show up for you.
Absolutely. And those were some great stats to reference, Brandon. So I'm glad you brought them up. One thing that we'll do here in this video is we will make sure to leave a link to the Leave Benchmark report in the comments so that anyone watching this video can go ahead and take a look at it for themselves. But this was a great discussion, Brandon. Thank you so much for hopping on with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick.